So I'm smoking a Custom-Bilt, probably from the Rich era. Isn't that nice? A lot like a BP Jum, I'll tell you. Notice the vinyl tubing. And in it, I'm smoking some MacBaren Burley from 2012. Kind of a big cut. This is actually one of the few Burleys, excuse me, I actually like. And I don't like it that much. These wide, shallow bowls kind of want a tobacco that burns pretty well. So, Latakia mixtures, oftentimes you just have to keep lighting them. Whereas the Burley, it's just a great burning tobacco. So, it's a little chocolatey, a little nutty. It's not bad. It's not great. Kind of suits the mood, though. Some more Custom-Bilt. You in the mood for some more Custom-Bilt stuff? All right. So, this, of course, is Bill Unger's book, As Individual as a Thumbprint, the Custom-Bilt Pipe Story. So he wrote, I don't actually, this is Bill Unger. I don't actually remember how many years ago my own interest in custom-built pipes began to develop. Pam Unger, his wife, claims that she turned me on to them because they reminded me of her grandfather's pipes. Having been made in Indianapolis, at least in the early years, they are still somewhat easy to find around the Midwest at the flea markets and yard sales that Pam Unger and I like to frequent. They can be visually striking with their deeply grooved lines. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Especially perhaps in the bigger pipes that I like. I do too. Mainly, however, compared to pipes like Patton Dunhill's pre-trans Barlings and a host of other collectible pipes, they are cheap. Perhaps because of an ingrained belief that everybody needs to collect something, I soon found myself with the beginning of a collection. From there, events snowballed. The word got out that I was interested in these pipes, and people began finding them for me. I also began to accumulate some old newspaper ads and clippings. I started to think this was an interesting slice of Americana, and that it might lead to an article. The project really took off in 1997 when Jim Tedesco purchased the contents of the Tracy Mincer Pipe Company from its then owner, Larry Stout of Indianapolis. Funny how, individual guys own this stuff and pass it along. The contents included several boxes of documents and correspondence which Jim let me copy at his house before selling them to a collector. I wonder who that collector is. It's not me. They also included a box of metal nomenclature stamps, which Jim loaned to me for as long as I needed them. And I think that's the stamps he's talking about for pipes. I also had in my possession a copy of a letter that Claude Stewart had written to Fred Janicek in 1979, blah, blah, blah. Detail. Bill's kind of a scholar, and so he goes into a lot of detail. Yeah. So, just to kind of recap about Custom-Bilts. A little bit of history of the Custom-Bilt eras. First comes what I'm calling the Custom-Bilt Pipe Company, covering the years 1929 to 1938. Not much is known about this period, and there is some question about the 1929 date, meaning it could really be 1934. Next comes Custom-Bilt Pipes, Inc., covering the period November 1938 to April 1946. These are the years of the Custom-Bilt hyphenated name. Some will consider them the glory years of Tracy Mincer's pipe-making efforts. Then come the Eugene Rich Custom-Bilt Pipes, one word, Inc., years from 1946 when Eugene Rich became Tracy Mincer's distributor and the spelling was changed in 1946, to 1952 when Mincer somehow lost the pipe altogether. These years saw an explosion of national advertising, increased production, and ancillary pipelines. This era was followed by the Rogers Imports years from 1952 to the late 1950s or early 1960s. After some years of inactivity, the Custom-Bilt name was acquired by Wally Frank in the early 1970s. So it doesn't appear to be any production between the very early 1960s and the early 1970s. Tracy Mincer died December 1st, 1964. But he'd lost the company long before that. A new burst of activity occurred, followed by dwindling interest and decreased quality until the Wally Frank Company was closed for good in 1998. So the Wally Frank era is from the early 1970s to 1998. Finally, there are the Tracy Mincer Pipe Company years, which I date from 1952 when Mincer lost the Custom-Bilt name, although I have no evidence about when or even if Mincer himself first used the name Tracy Mincer Pipe Company. This era includes the years during which Mincer introduced the Doodler, about which he had such high hopes. It ends with the time from 1966 to 1990, during which Claude Stewart made many pipes stamped Tracy Mincer. I don't have any of those pipes. So, detail. Let's see. In World War II, at the outbreak of the war, Tracy Mincer was faced with two major problems. First, it seems likely that he could no longer obtain the aluminum from which his filter was made in the early pipes because of its demand in the defense and aircraft industries. Second, after using up his briar on hand, he probably faced the difficult task of obtaining more briar and or high-quality briar. Had there been no war, who knows where Mincer might have gone with his large hand-carved, straight-grain pipes. Both problems combined, however, to put the finish to this line. So that was the early Custom-Bilt pipes. And I don't have any of those. I'm not too familiar with those, honestly. I haven't really studied those. Faced with these obstacles, Mincer did what he could to stay in business. He did away with the patented filter, and he produced the pipes he could with the briar he could get, devising a new way to give them a distinctive appearance. It's difficult to tell how much trouble the briar problem gave him. Hetzer Hartzog in 2000 told me that Tracy had a hard time getting Algerian briar, but I think one of the reasons he was able to get it was that he was buying in smaller lots than what K. Woody and them guys was wanting, because they were all having trouble getting briar. Tracy had somebody who was able to get him good quality briar, but how he did it and others didn't, I don't know. In any case, Mincer came up with a different plan that seemingly allowed him to produce a lot of big pipes while maintaining a somewhat distinctive look. Hetzer Hartzog, again in 2000, told it like this. I can tell you something about that rough texture that Custom-Bilts had. Tracy was trying all kinds of ways to get a better rough texture on pipes. One reason rough texture was used was not only for the looks, but it could hide flaws in the briar. It came to him in the middle of the night how to do it. The idea was that they used the head off of a lathe made by Delta, and he used just the head spindle. And he put on a 1/4 inch or 5/16 inch drill where the thing was ground on the end, so the two end flutes, the points, stuck out. Well, he ground the points so it had a reverse taper on the end. He had two spurs sticking out. When he held the pipe, the briar, against the spur going around very fast, it chattered, it dug. A very uncontrolled cut. And that started giving the roughness of like a gnarled nut or something like that. Then he would buff that. He made the pipe bowl to begin with on a phrasing machine. F-A-R-A-I-Z. Phrasing, I don't know what that is. Then he had a line of men who would hold these things against those heads sitting on a stool, and it would chatter and make the various grooved lines in a pipe bowl. If you want to do it, you can try it. It works like $1 million. Detail, detail, detail. Let's see. So that is how he did this unique routering, if you will. And it is unique. It is unique. It's just nothing else like it. Let's see. Let's see. In any case, by early 1953, Tracy Mincer was no longer associated with Custom-Bilt pipes. On March 19, 1953, Mincer wrote Harry Rosenberg of the Lewis Klein Cigar Company in Cleveland that, in regards to Custom-Bilts, I am not in any way connected with them anymore. It's a long story. I'll tell you about it sometime. However, I don't see why you can't get them from Rogers. I think they're having them made in Brooklyn. Right now my production is all doodlers, about 100 per day. I may at a later date make a pipe like CB, would you be interested in one under your own name? So, you know, women smoking pipes. Of course, we think it's this modern phenomenon. Mincer was not, however, thrilled at the idea of women pipe smokers. He may have been a bit of a sexist. An unattributed clipping from sometime in 1944 reports that Tracy Mincer, who makes custom-built pipes, says he's not going to let conditions rush him into creating pipes for the fair sex. With production for men behind the demand, the boys still rate the priority. If the ladies wish to smoke Mr. Mincer's fine pipes, they'll just have to make do with the stocky man-sized brand. He believes women are taking it up only as a fad, despite reports from an engineer at Curtis Wright to the effect that some of the girls there have taken to pipes, and from the Bowers Envelope Company, where Ralph Jacobs is said to have come upon feminine pipe smokers. In 1944, Rosie the Riveter. Tracy and his wife, Millie, lived in an older home on a small acreage near Nora, north of Indianapolis. I remember his having a Craftsman panel room in walnut. Tracy loved the beauty of distressed wood, so he had the man accent the natural flaws in the walnut. Tracy insisted on things being done right. I remember a time when the production of pipes were not perfect. They lacked the luster he desired. He shut down the whole line, starting from the raw blocks of briar. He studied each operation, finding mostly small faults caused by haste in trying to get out more production. I do not recall how much custom production was lost in his effort to locate the problem, but from then on his pipes were custom built. So, there is a picture of him right there, working on presumably the lathe with the, the bit that's been changed. So, I have these little sticky notes so I can go to places. Hacker wrote a book in 1999, and Unger has some issues with that. You know, Hacker says some things that that Unger just doesn't think is probably true. Hacker wrote, the briar for custom-built pipes was cured by alternate heating and cooling. Infrared lamps were used to hasten the process. Then, employing a series of phrasing tools, again, that word, Mincer had his workmen route out the blemished areas of the pipe bowls, thus creating a series of random, jagged grooves in what was no longer a smooth, finished pipe. Unger writes, the infrared heating system is accurate. In fact, Mincer seemed rather proud of it, although I have no idea how well it worked. Certainly no one seems to use it today. Yes, indeed. Okay. So I guess that's about it. This book is no longer available. And you can see it's kind of a semi-handmade production. You know, I'm sure it was produced by a press operation, but you know, it's not bound in the usual way. So, kind of a low volume book. Yeah, I think you can find them occasionally on eBay, but pretty interesting stuff. Phrasing. Really? Wow. I don't know. So a few blackberries. I was mowing. I have these scars because I was not wearing my new sleeve, my new gauntlet. Look at that. If only I'd been wearing that, I would be unblemished. I'll wear it next time. So I did get a couple of these. So they were cheap. Made for welding, I think. So should work for blackberries. The blackberries are starting to produce the first berries. I think it's a little early, which might portend a hot, dry summer. Who knows? But I had a little handful of them today. There's only a few producing berries, but that's where you get really carved up, is picking berries. So those little gauntlet things are going to be really handy. Kitty. Yeah. So we're just out here enjoying the afternoon. And I hope you are too. Beautiful. Yeah, there really is no rustication that I know of that is very similar to these Custom-Bilts. You know, I mean, Middleton made a line called Rugged Root, and I like them. They're not, the bowls aren't as thick. They have an interesting gouged rustication, and they are quite rugged looking. But yeah, there's just kind of nothing like this. Huh. Tracy Mincer. Thank you very much.